Hello, welcome to another one of these special Snowflake things. This time this is where I go and try to take on some character concepts that are a little bit unusual for a given uh, setting, or maybe not unusual in and of themselves, but may have some ways that are difficult for people to figure out how to do them within the mechanics. And as I've said in other videos, I pretty much try to stick straight to official rules on this. I don't do anything with the homebrewing, and I generally feel that homebrew and working with your GM is the best way to do unusual concepts. Unusual concepts are fun, but they can be a little bit of work. Um, this case, the game system I'm going with is going to be less problematic and is very flexible already, so it's not going to be all that much about doing mechanics as in working with mechanics that exist. We're going to do a phase tank. This is based off a character I played in a superhero campaign um, where name was Megumi Morisato, and yes, I stole that from an anime. Her superhero name was Grayskin. This is a piece of art that I had commissioned for one of our primary battles, and this is Megumi. Now, Megumi I wanted to do a super strength character, and I was kind of limited in how much strength I could give because there was already a strongest person in the world, and my brother said I couldn't go above that his strength. So I ended up limited to about 45 strength, which is definitely superhumanly strong, but a lot of bricks start at about 60 in champions. So and I eventually came up with this unusual idea that I was going to throw in some desolidification and make all her powers based off dimensional phasing, a la Shadowcat, because I hadn't heard of that being done before, at least not at the time. In truth, there is a character that does mix super strength and phasing capabilities, and that would be the Vision, and there's a couple others that do the same. Now, as this was a champions thing, and we are going to be doing this in the hero system, and I am going to say I can't think of a way to do this in like 5e without a lot of a lot of working with your GM on it, because the setup of the classes just doesn't fit to give somebody the ability to walk through walls. Speaking of walking through walls, the first thing we're going to have to deal with on for powers you're going to be taking in playing a phase tank, one you will definitely be the ability to pass through things, which in champions or hero system is called desolidification. It is a 40-point base cost. You have to determine the special effects. Is it magic? Is it dimensional phasing the way this character was? Is it turning into gas? Whatever. You have to set a vulnerability. There has to be a way to affect your character even while they're desolidified. My character's case, it was radiation. Now we're going to go on to the tank part. Now, the typical term for describing a super strength character in D&D is a brick. I decided not to term her as a brick. I termed her as a tank, which is the thing I got from City of Heroes, because tanks don't do as much damage as bricks, but they're as hard to take out of a fight, if not harder. So the defense portion we'll get to later. Let's do the super strength first. Now, in actuality, for a tank, you don't really need super strength, but it was what we were going for. So I divided her super strength into two parts. The first part was in her characteristics and was 15 or 20, I believe. 15 points. I think it was 15 points. Was her natural strength. That was her actual physical strength, and that's about twice as strong as the average person. Every increment of 5 doubles the amount you can lift, and 10 is the average person. So she was a reasonably strong person even without the superpowers. The rest of her super strength I bought as a power, and I bought it with the does double knockback capability, which you don't really need to do. I did that because I wanted to. Uh, but the remaining 30 points of her strength I bought as a power. And the difference, there was no point difference in cost really, except for one thing. There's no real difference in cost. The only thing that changed was this: buying it separately that way means it can be targeted by powers that drain superhuman abilities, whereas the natural characteristics would have to be carried by somebody else. Now we're going to get to the main portion of what a tank is, and that's the defense. Now, desolidification is already a very good defense. Things will just go through you and they can't damage you unless they're that specific vulnerability that you already listed. Like I said, what do you call it? Um, yeah, radiation was mine. Now, damage resistance is it reduces the amount of damage coming in after this roll. Damage reduction reduces things by a percentage. Damage negation reduces the number of dice the attacker rolls to hurt you. And then there are special defenses, which include power defense, which means things that try to transform you or drain your powers have a harder time, and mental defense, which is protecting your mind. Megumi had all of those. No, she only had damage resistance and the power defense and the mental defense because her definition was she wasn't entirely on one dimension and it was harder for things to affect her. Damage negation did not exist at the time, and I would have been tempted to use it. And she did actually have a little bit of damage reduction. Now, uh, another thing about phasing, this is not going to the phase tank, but this is a little bit of mechanical tinkering that I came up with this for this character. You can purchase things in the game to be effects desolidification, and if they are purchase effects desolidified, then it doesn't matter what your special effect is, it's blocked. Like if a wall affects desolidified, you can't walk through it. I wanted my character to be able to get around that. So I created a power I called Walk Through Anything. And this is one of the things I like about Hero System is the ability to come up with your own powers using the other powers as base. So I had walk through anything. Now, the point of being able to walk through something is be able to get from point A to point B, and there are a number of different ways to do that. And the one I went with was teleportation. Teleportation has already been used to represent super speed, so I thought, why not use it to represent going through a wall? And when it be blocked by effects desolidified, you only have to buy a couple meters worth of teleport. Now, the downside is it uses your entire turn to get that 2 or 3 meters, your entire movement to get that 2 or 3 meters, but that makes sense because it's resisting your desolidified. It would take you longer to get through it. Also add that only usable from one side of a barrier to another, so you couldn't just teleport short distances. You had to be walking through something. And you had to make it armor piercing, which I'll get. Armor piercing is because you can buy things so that you cannot be escaped with teleportation. Buy it on a wall, and it will prevent people from teleporting through the wall. And you can buy armor piercing to get past that thing. They can buy several layers of that. You can buy several layers of armor piercing. I asked my brother when he was running the campaign, would 2 levels of armor piercing get through cover any amount of prevention that any substance in the universe had to keep her from walking through it? And he said yes. And so that's how I came up with Walk Through Anything. You notice it was a 4-point power. The original version, I made it cost extra endurance for her to do that, make it more tiring. So so it ended up being a 2-point cost. And I actually never used it. I used it once in a danger room setting where there wasn't any actual danger. It's just 2 people arguing about getting into a box. And I had my character walk through it just without realizing she had walked through it. And everybody just sort of looked at her. I never actually used it because in most of the cases where there was something that nobody could walk through, what was on the other side was something that would not be enjoyable and might tear me apart even as tough as I was, or would attract too much attention. Like there was a jail cell at one point, which we were in a spaceship, and then there was a jail cell I could have walked out of, but doing so would have alerted the people around us that I could walk out of the jail cell, so I didn't do it. So it ended up just being a flavor thing that she could walk through anything in the world, because there never came a point where it was advisable to do so, or that I could show it off. Which I kind of wished there was something that ability would have been able to shine, but it never got a chance to. I only got it towards the end of the campaign anyway. But yeah, that's some of the things you can do in a point buy game. Hero System has a very granular point buy system. Other point buy systems, you could do stuff similar, like in using the masterminds and big eye, small mouth, and other such systems. My issue generally with other point buy systems is they simplify a lot of the math, which the math in Hero System isn't really all that complex anyway. You might think it is, but they simplify a lot of the math uh, and remove some of the granularity, and this tends to make things uh, tends to affect the power creep somewhat. Like in Mutants Masterminds, you start getting too many points. You start getting characters really powerful really fast, and it gets hard to balance over time. But this is just some ways you can use to rework the teleportation. Turning into walk through anything is the main reason I did this. Um, the actual Hero System 6th edition rules on character creation already has a lot of the stuff I talked about on using desolidification for defenses and attack. It's there's a sidebar next to the desolidification power that's called desolidification tricks. It includes the damage resistance. It includes not super strength, but it includes a disruptive touch, disrupting electronics, disrupting metabolism, stuff like that. So this is itself not really a special snowflake because the concepts that it has have already been thought of, but I wanted to go over at least the walk through anything. But doing an entire video on just walk through anything seemed a little bit eh. But this is how this is the game I started with in role playing, Hero System Champions, and this is the kind of thinking you would use in making any sort of superhero character in Champions, and this is the kind of thinking I use in in whenever I'm doing these kind of character concepts where I take the mechanics and I split the fluff off and I create new fluff to explain the mechanics. That's This is generally what I do. So that's another video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.